that the subjects, unwitting subjects of the system, give the nod to it every day. It's as if somebody's stealing from your garage and every night, and you need the things that are in there, and you replace them every day until they take more things than you can replace every day, and then this thing doesn't work anymore. And they realize, oh, so-and-so can't afford to buy all that stuff again. I really need an ever, inexhaustible supply of crescent wrenches, so I'll wait a few nights till they can afford to replace the crescent wrench, because I can't remember where I put the 344 that I've already stolen from them. So they let 2 nights go by, and they go in there and steal your crescent wrench again. and if you replace it, they'll take it again tomorrow, because they don't even care where they put it. They just throw it off the side of the road when they're done with it or whatever. That's more or less what's going on with this banking system. So if it weren't terminal, we still have to fix it. The fact that it's terminal is, I believe, actually an inadvertent consequence. I really don't see that any of these people are really that devious. I mean, they're very devious. In fact, many of them, I would say, are even incredibly evil. But I can't give them credit for actually conceiving of a means of stealing from the whole world on such a scale, which is terminal not only to the world so much that it's going to piss the world off, and that same person who's so brilliant is yet wanting to sit in the driver's seat as that scenario comes down the road. I just don't see that. Yes, they're egotistical. They believe that somehow there's a magic button that they can push, which has already been pushed in panic, for 100 years, which is going to cause some different effect. But the only reason that they think so is they're stupid. Like Ellen Hodgson Brown thinks she has an alternate solution and can't even articulate it to us. Sure, she can say, well, you can do 20 jumping jacks over in the corner over there, and that's going to fix everything. But that isn't articulating a solution. She's just asserting these things, claiming this, claiming that. Same thing, Stevens Arlinga. The list goes on and on and on. And why did any of these people stand up and say, I have a solution, when the work they plagiarized from the very beginning, from day one and to this very day, still says singular solution, right? Planted on every page. You can't possibly miss it if you're half a studier at all. So I see stupidity on both sides, which is phenomenal. I can't tell you how much it offends me when everything I hear from these plagiarists is just so preposterous. When a 16-year-old kid 42 years ago had already proved them wrong, proved that there's only one way to do this, and here 42 years late they're jumping up and down as if they're providing a solution. I mean, it's just preposterous. I mean, it's hideous. It's as stupid gets, and who can actually prove it's a solution? Here I am arguing with their supporters that who are asserting over and over and over again, no matter how many times you prove otherwise to them, that money cannot be a debt. When if there's no obligation, there can be no integrity whatsoever. And the very people that are advocating this inevitably admit that they can't solve inflation unless they provide a way for every penny of it to be withdrawn from circulation. And there's your obligation. All they're doing is a matter of convenience to pretend they have a solution. They're eliminating any reference to that vital fact in their work, and the only reason they're doing that is because they are that unfit to claim that they're providing solution. They're just purely as inept gets. So that's pretty much it around the board. I mean, we can talk about these people individually. and I could ask, but what's the point? I will say that in wrestling with their supporters, I do sometimes see things which I believe I've made obvious, which they raise as another matter that they don't understand, and it allows me an opportunity eventually to restore to them an understanding, to give them a doorway to go through, to understand that what they've thought is solution is not solution at all. They were in the wrong place at the wrong time, and they got a bag of popcorn instead, and it cost them some money, and that was the whole purpose of the bag of popcorn. And now they have to get serious. They go, well, at least that person informed me of this. I'm sorry. All that person did was plagiarize all the history that I presented to teach, and they stripped it of all its teaching, and they did that to make a buck, and that's what's wrong with it, because it's just as divisive gets. We have all these different factions now who, quote unquote, know that their solution is a monetary solution, and not one of them can even articulate it. You visit these sites, Nassara doesn't even explain why the obfuscation of the currency is terminal. Yet, after I've argued against them for close to 20 years, they also become advocates of eradicating interest, likewise, without any explanation of that on their pages. All you see is a hodgepodge of assertion after assertion, as if it's solution, and any intelligent person who reads this stuff is constantly, sentence after sentence, if you're trying to understand this, perceive it for whatever it is, you're saying, but where's the math? Where's the accountability? What do you mean that's a solution? How? Why? What did it solve? Oh, I already understand that interest has to be eradicated. How do I understand that if I can't even articulate that the banking system isn't even a creditor? It intervenes between the actual creditor who gives up property for the promissory obligation and the obligor merely to issue evidence of our promissory obligations to each other, that principal should be retired from circulation, that instead the banking system launders it into its own possession, thus enriching itself to the extent of all the principal that's ever created for the mere cost of publishing our promissory obligations to each other, and then multiplies that into terminal artificial indebtedness by interest, by this implicit obligation to maintain a vital circulation, which requires perpetually reborrowing principal and interest back into circulation as an ever greater sum of debt, inherently increased by so much as periodic interest on an ever greater sum of debt. Ellen Hodgson Brown can't articulate that. Stevens Arlinga can't articulate that. These people can't articulate that because it wasn't their original idea. They don't understand it, and they haven't said it tens of thousands of times over 40 years as the original author and the original author only has. That's the difference. That's a huge difference. But that's why you don't go to these people for solution, and that's why you ought to see in their work that not one of them advocates solution whatsoever. What does Ellen Hodgson Brown say? It's a Ponzi scheme. A Ponzi scheme. Read the definition of a Ponzi scheme and then perform an experiment on yourself. From the definition of a Ponzi scheme, prescribe solution of the categoric faults of this lie of economy. It's impossible. It doesn't even relate. It's not even truly a Ponzi scheme at all. And to call it a Ponzi scheme is the last thing that the actual author of solution would ever have done. You know, solution is a process of carefully looking at all the parts, seeing exactly what they are, and regardless, first of all, regardless of whatever anyone in the world calls that thing, almost always giving it a more explicit name, which exactingly expresses exactly what that thing is. Is inflation both increases of prices and increases in the volume of circulation? Do they correspond to each other? Absolutely not. So an author of solution, a person who builds a solution, inherently, automatically, and inevitably, without exception, develops two terms for those two different things. And that's exactly why I have two terms, circulatory inflation and price inflation. That's exactly why. And that's why those terms express exactly what they do. You see? So you can't pick up a book on solution and see it doesn't even have the terminology which is intrinsic to solution and to solution only. In a plagiarist's work, you read the word Ponzi scheme. Now, Ponzi scheme is the last idea. Can you imagine this? Sitting at a desk or working on a computer, writing, as I did, writing models which even calculate the maximum possible lifespan of any purported economy based on interest-bearing debt with phenomenal accuracy, such that you could project global monetary failure in 2010 from 1983. And sitting here, as you write all this code, perfect algorithms that account for every detail and nuance and exception and anomaly, and in the end of realizing exactly this obfuscation of the currency, this implicit obligation to maintain a vital circulation, how then interest inherently and irreversibly multiplies artificial indebtedness into terminal artificial indebtedness, and then just jumping out of your chair when you get the, eureka moment and saying, it's a Ponzi scheme. There is absolutely no way in the world that is the ultimate consequence of walking the road to the solution. That's absolutely impossible. That is the term of an imposter, and an imposter only. I couldn't make myself call this a Ponzi scheme. When you throw that word at me, it aggravates me every time I hear it, even if I didn't know Ellen Hodgson Brown. If somebody just said, after I carefully explained all this to them, they jumped up out of their chair and go, that's a Ponzi scheme. I'm thinking, how ignorant could you be to have heard the articulation of the intricacies of that and merely assume it's just some kind of Ponzi scheme or something? Like you could stop people from mailing checks to each other in the mail and that would fix this thing or something. It's just preposterous. And I mean, people haven't even begun to wake up that they think, oh, well, it's great that, Ellen Hodgson Brown really helped us out here. I'm sorry. She's proudly cruising the world boasting that she has one solution after another. And what happened actually is when she learned that the words that came out of Benjamin Franklin's mouth in my parable of perfect economy were Mike Montagne's words, she quit saying that the Pennsylvania currency was the most brilliant banking model in our nation's history. Why? She wants all the credit for herself. And despite the fact that every day that she spends wherever she goes, she's exposing the fact that she's no authority at all. None at all. you know. But she withdrew that, and then she began to advocate a different banking system. And, you know, one day you hear her praising interest. We've got to retain it in a banking system, and, you know, we can introduce it into circulation, but it's non-inflationary. She doesn't say it's not deflationary, and she doesn't show you how it's non-inflationary. She just